I'm Jessica, 34, and I still can't believe I had to watch my brother Thomas high-five my sister Emily after she joked about hoping my car would accidentally slide off a cliff with me in it. The worst part? 20 family members laughed like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. Little did they know, I'd already discovered the trust fund they'd been hiding from me for years, money our grandparents left specifically for all three of us. As I walked away from that BBQ, tears streaming down my face, I made a decision that would forever change our family dynamic. If you're watching this and have ever felt betrayed by family, you're not alone. I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments and hit that subscribe button if family drama stories like mine resonate with you. Trust me, what happened next in my journey for justice is something you won't want to miss. To understand why that BBQ incident cut so deep, you need to know a bit about my family history. I grew up with my older siblings Thomas, now 38, and Emily, 36. From as far back as I can remember, our parents clearly favored them, especially Thomas, being the only boy. I was what they not so lovingly called the accident child. Born 6 years after Emily, when my parents thought their family was complete. Despite the obvious favoritism, the three of us were actually close growing up. Thomas would let me tag along when his friends came over, and Emily taught me how to do my makeup before school dances. We had our typical sibling squabbles, but nothing that seemed out of the ordinary. I genuinely believed we had each other's backs. Our different paths in life became apparent as we reached adulthood. I worked hard in high school and earned a full scholarship to college, eventually becoming a financial advisor. My career choice was partly influenced by watching my parents' financial mistakes. Meanwhile, Thomas dropped out of college twice before our parents fully funded his real estate business. Emily married into money at 25 and hasn't worked a day since, though she loves to brag about her exhausting charity committee meetings. My grandparents, my dad's parents, always had a special relationship with me. Grandma Jean would often tell me, "Jessica, we see you," with a meaningful look that acknowledged the favoritism I experienced. They attended every school event my parents missed and called me weekly during college when my parents were too busy with Thomas's latest business venture or Emily's wedding planning. When they passed away 5 years ago, Grandpa first. Then Grandma just 3 months later, I was devastated. The inheritance appeared minimal. Some family photos, Grandma's recipe book, and a few pieces of jewelry. Thomas and Emily received similar mementos. I never questioned it, believing our grandparents had modest means. As adults, the subtle mistreatment from my siblings continued, but I remained loyal. Thomas would forget to invite me to important family functions until the last minute. Emily would make backhanded compliments about how brave I was to wear certain outfits with my body type. I brushed these comments off, believing that blood is thicker than water. Our parents' health began declining about 2 years ago. Dad developed heart problems, and Mom was diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's. This led to more frequent family gatherings as we discussed their care. During these meetings, I noticed my siblings often made decisions without consulting me, then informed me after the fact. What confused me most was the increasing hostility over the past 6 months. Thomas seemed annoyed by my very presence, and Emily would roll her eyes whenever I spoke. The shift felt dramatic, but I couldn't pinpoint what had changed. Had I offended them somehow? Was there something I was missing? The answer came unexpectedly last month when I was helping my parents organize their home office. In an old desk that had belonged to my grandparents, I found a USB drive labeled Family Documents. I pocketed it without thinking much of it, assuming it contained old family photos or perhaps some of Grandpa's writings he used to work on. Little did I know that small plastic device would unravel everything I thought I knew about my family. The annual summer barbecue at Thomas's house was always a big deal. This year marked the 10th anniversary of him hosting it at the mansion he purchased 3 years ago, a sprawling 5-bedroom colonial with an in-ground pool and professionally landscaped gardens in the most exclusive neighborhood in town. I always felt a twinge of curiosity about how he afforded it on his real estate commission, but I assumed he was simply better with money than I gave him credit for. I arrived at exactly 2 p.m., the time specified on the invitation. As I walked through the side gate to the backyard, I immediately noticed Thomas and Emily standing by the grill, cocktails in hand. They exchanged a look when they saw me, not a welcoming glance, but something more conspiratorial. Thomas whispered something to Emily, who smirked in response. "Jessica, you made it!" Thomas called out with exaggerated enthusiasm. "We were just saying we weren't sure if you'd come." "Why wouldn't I come?" I asked, confused. I'd never missed a family BBQ. "Oh, you're always so busy with your, what do you call it? Financial advising?" Emily's tone made my profession sound like a hobby rather than a career. I smiled tightly and held up the glass container in my hands. "I brought Mom's potato salad recipe." "Oh, how quaint," Emily said. "We've got catering, but I'm sure someone will eat it." As I placed my dish on the table, Thomas's wife Madison accidentally bumped into me, causing the container to nearly topple over. She offered a quick sorry that didn't sound sorry at all. Throughout the afternoon, I tried engaging with various family members, but conversations seemed to die whenever I joined a group. Aunt Patricia asked about my job, but before I could answer, Emily interrupted to announce her husband's recent promotion. Uncle Robert started telling me about his retirement plans until Thomas pulled him away to show him something in the garage. While helping to bring out more drinks from the kitchen, I overheard Thomas and Emily talking in hushed tones. "Has she mentioned anything about the fund?" Thomas asked. "No, she's clueless as always," Emily replied. "Let's keep it that way." They immediately stopped talking when I entered, Emily quickly changing the subject to her recent vacation in the Maldives. I pretended not to have heard anything, but my mind was racing. What fund were they talking about? The tension culminated during dinner. Everyone was seated around several large tables on the patio. Thomas stood to make his annual toast. "I want to thank everyone for coming to our 10th annual family BBQ." He began, champagne flute in hand. "It's amazing to see how far we've all come. Well, most of us anyway." He glanced at me with a smirk. "Some of us are still figuring things out." A few awkward chuckles rippled through the gathering. I felt my cheeks burning but maintained my composure. When Thomas finished his toast, I tried to change the subject. "Mom and Dad's anniversary is coming up next month. I was thinking we could plan something special." Speaking of special, Emily interrupted loudly. "Jessica, is that the same car you've been driving for like 8 years now? That little blue Honda?" "Yes," I replied cautiously. "It's reliable and paid off." "You should be careful driving that old thing on mountain roads," Emily continued, her eyes gleaming maliciously. "Wouldn't want you to have an accident. Although maybe if it accidentally slid off a cliff, insurance would finally force you to upgrade." She laughed dramatically. Thomas high-fived her. "Good one, Em." What shocked me most wasn't their behavior, it was the reaction of our entire extended family. 20 people, including our parents, laughed along. Uncle Robert slapped his knee. Cousin Sarah nearly spat out her drink from laughing. Even our mother chuckled while shaking her head. They were laughing about me dying in a car accident. I sat frozen, my fork hovering mid-air. No one seemed to notice or care about my reaction. The conversation simply moved on, as if nothing inappropriate had been said. With as much dignity as I could muster, I set down my napkin and stood up. "I'm not feeling well. I think I should go." "Oh, come on, Jessica," Thomas called as I gathered my things. "Can't you take a joke? You've always been so sensitive." I didn't respond. Walking to my car with tears streaming down my face, I could hear the party continuing without a hitch. Through the patio doors, I saw Emily mimicking my expression to more laughter. Sitting in my car, I watched my family through the window talking, laughing, completely unbothered by my absence. That's when I remembered the USB drive I'd found. Thomas and Emily's whispered conversation about the fund suddenly took on new significance. Whatever was on that drive, I needed to look at it immediately. As soon as I got home, I plugged the USB drive into my laptop. What I found left me breathless. The drive contained a comprehensive set of scanned documents, including my grandparents' will, trust documents, bank statements, and email correspondence. As I read through the files with trembling hands, the truth became devastatingly clear. My grandparents had left a substantial trust fund to be divided equally among their 3 grandchildren, Thomas, Emily, and me. According to the legal documents, The trust had been established with proceeds from the sale of their vacation property and smart investments over the years. The initial amount was just over $900,000, but it had grown to more than $2.1 million in the 5 years since their passing. Thomas had been named executor of the trust, with a stipulation that all 3 beneficiaries needed to sign off on any distributions. The documents explicitly stated that we were each entitled to 1/3 of the total amount. I sat back in my chair, stunned. My grandparents had intended for each of us to receive approximately $700,000 money that could have changed my life. I could have bought a house instead of continuing to rent my small apartment. I could have started my own financial advisory firm rather than working for someone else. I could have helped with our parents' medical expenses instead of struggling to contribute what little I could. For a moment, I wondered if Thomas and Emily were simply waiting for the right time to tell me about my inheritance. Perhaps they were managing it responsibly until all of us could discuss it together. That slim hope was crushed when I opened a folder labeled Correspondence. Inside were dozens of emails between Thomas and Emily dating back 5 years. The earliest ones were sent just days after our grandmother's funeral. She has no idea about any of this. Let's keep it that way. Thomas agreed. She'd just waste it anyway. What's she going to do? Become a financial advisor to the rich and famous? Please, Emily, I'll handle the paperwork. As far as Jessica knows, Grandma and Grandpa left us each a few keepsakes and nothing more. Thomas. More recent emails revealed they had been making withdrawals from the trust for themselves. Thomas had used a significant portion as a down payment for his mansion. Emily had funded multiple luxury vacations and a small investment in her husband's business venture. I flashed back to Thomas's new house 3 years ago. Emily's increased spending, their exotic vacations, it all made sense now. My siblings had been stealing my inheritance for years, all while treating me like a family afterthought. I remembered my grandparents' funeral, how Thomas and Emily had appeared genuinely devastated. How Thomas had given a moving eulogy about Grandpa's integrity and Grandma's generosity. All an act. They had been planning their betrayal even as they wiped away tears at the service. My hands shaking with rage and disbelief, I immediately called Rachel, a friend from college who had become an attorney specializing in estate law. They can't do this, Rachel confirmed after I explained the situation. This is straightforward theft. As a beneficiary named in the trust, you have legal rights. Thomas has breached his fiduciary duty as the executor. But Jessica, before you confront them, we need to gather more evidence. Following Rachel's advice, I spent the next week documenting everything. I made copies of all files, researched trust law, and created a timeline of the deception. Rachel helped me prepare the initial paperwork for a legal claim, though she advised giving them one chance to make things right before filing. Sometimes the threat of legal action is enough, she said. It could save you months of court battles. Late one night, my phone rang. It was Madison, my cousin, not to be confused with Thomas's wife of the same name. She had been at the BBQ and witnessed the car accident joke. Jessica, I've been feeling terrible about what happened, she said. The way they treated you wasn't right. Thanks for saying that, I replied, touched that at least one family member had recognized the cruelty. There's something else, Madison continued hesitantly. After you left, I overheard Thomas and Emily talking. They mentioned something about keeping Jessica out of it and how they'd handled it for 5 years already. I didn't know what they meant, but it sounded wrong. This confirmation from an outside source strengthened my resolve. It was time to confront my siblings. I spent hours rehearsing what I would say, preparing myself for their denials, their excuses, their attempts to manipulate me as they had done my entire life. But this time would be different. This time, I had evidence. That night, I barely slept, but a strange calm had settled over me. For the first time in my life, I was about to stand up to the family members who had always made me feel less than. Whether they made things right or not, I would never see them the same way again. I texted both Thomas and Emily asking to meet at our parents' house to discuss important matters regarding Mom and Dad's ongoing care. Neither suspected my true intentions, quickly agreeing to meet the following Saturday while our parents were at their weekly bridge game. That morning, I arrived early to prepare. I placed copies of the trust documents and incriminating emails in 3 separate folders. I positioned my phone to record the conversation, with Rachel on standby for a conference call if needed. I had rehearsed what I would say dozens of times, yet my heart still pounded as I heard their cars pulling into the driveway. "Jessica, this is a surprise. You're actually early for once," Thomas said as he strode through the front door, Emily close behind. Efficient as always, I replied with a forced smile. "Let's sit in the dining room. I've prepared some materials I'd like to discuss." "Materials?" "I thought this was about Mom and Dad," Emily said, her perfectly plucked eyebrows furrowing. "In a way, it is about family," I said, gesturing toward the dining table where the folders waited. Once we were all seated, I took a deep breath. "Before we begin, I want to give you both an opportunity to tell me anything you think I should know about our grandparents' estate." Thomas and Emily exchanged a quick glance. "What are you talking about?" Thomas laughed dismissively. "They left us those keepsakes years ago. You got Grandma's jewelry, remember? That's all you think they left?" I pressed. "Of course," Emily said, her voice slightly higher than normal. "What else would there be?" I nodded slowly, then opened the first folder. This is a copy of our grandparents' will and trust documents. As you can see, they left a trust fund of over $900,000 to be divided equally among the 3 of us. I slid the papers across the table. Thomas barely glanced at them before pushing them away. "These are obviously fake," he scoffed, but the color had drained from his face. "Really?" "Because they're notarized, and I verified their authenticity with the law firm that drafted them." I opened the second folder. "These are bank statements showing the trust's growth to over $2.1 million in the past 5 years, as well as withdrawals made by both of you totaling approximately $1.4 million. Emily's confident demeanor cracked. "Thomas handled all of that," she said quickly. "I just signed what he told me to sign." "That's not true," Thomas snapped at her. "You were the one who suggested using the money for your investment in Brandon's startup, and you didn't object when you used it to buy this mansion." Emily shot back. I let them bicker for a moment before opening the third folder. "And these are copies of emails between the 2 of you, discussing how to keep me in the dark about my inheritance." The room fell silent as they stared at the printed emails, their own words condemning them. "Where did you get these?" Thomas finally asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Does it matter? The point is, I know everything now." Thomas leaned forward, his face suddenly red with anger. "Look, Jessica, you don't understand. You've always been fine on your own. Emily and I have families, responsibilities." "I have responsibilities too," I interrupted. "I've been contributing to Mom and Dad's medical bills from my salary, while you 2 have been living off money that was partly mine." "You don't need it like we do," Emily cried, tears suddenly streaming down her face. "Your life is so simple. You don't have the pressure of maintaining a certain lifestyle." "A lifestyle funded by stealing from your sister," I replied calmly. Thomas slammed his fist on the table. "No court will believe you. It's been 5 years. The statute of limitations." Actually, I cut in. "The statute of limitations for fraud in our state is 7 years. And it only begins when the fraud is discovered, which was last week for me." I pulled out my phone. "By the way, I've been recording this entire conversation." Thomas lunged across the table, reaching for my phone. "Give me that." I jerked backward, narrowly avoiding his grasp. "Touch me or my property, and I'll add assault to the lawsuit." He froze, breathing heavily, then slowly sat back down. Emily switched tactics immediately. "Jessica, please," she sobbed. "We're family. We can work this out. Maybe we can give you some of it now?" "Some of it?" I laughed incredulously. "You mean some of what's rightfully mine?" "What do you want?" Thomas asked flatly. "I want my full third of the original trust amount, plus the interest and growth it would have accrued over 5 years had you not stolen from me. My attorney has calculated that to be approximately $950,000. I also want a written admission of what you've done, signed by both of you." "That's ridiculous," Thomas exploded. "We don't have that kind of money just sitting around." "Then sell the house you bought with my money," I suggested. "Or Emily can sell some of those designer bags she's been flaunting on Instagram." Just then, we heard the front door open. Our parents had returned early from their bridge game. "Kids, what are you all doing here?" Mom asked, looking confused as she entered the dining room. Dad followed slowly with his walker. Thomas immediately put on a concerned expression. "Mom, Dad, we're worried about Jessica. She's making wild accusations about Grandma and Grandpa's will. I think she might be having some kind of breakdown." Emily nodded eagerly. "She's created these fake documents and is demanding money from us." "It's scary, really." I looked at my parents' concerned faces and made a split-second decision. This wasn't how I'd planned it, but maybe it was better this way. "Mom, Dad, I found Grandma and Grandpa's actual will and trust documents. They left each of us grandchildren an equal share of a significant trust fund. Thomas and Emily have been hiding this from me for 5 years and spending my portion of the inheritance." My father looked bewildered. "What are you talking about, Jessica?" "She's lying," Thomas shouted. "Mom, you know how Jessica has always been jealous of us." With steady hands, I spread the documents across the table. These are copies of the original will and trust. There are also bank statements showing withdrawals made by Thomas and Emily, and emails between them discussing how to keep me in the dark. My parents stared at the papers in shock. Mom picked up one of the emails and read it aloud. "If Jessica ever finds out about the trust, we're screwed. Let's move more of it offshore next month." "Thomas, is this really from you?" It's not what it looks like," Thomas stammered. "We were planning to surprise Jessica eventually." "With what? The leftovers?" I asked bitterly. My father slowly lowered himself into a chair, looking ashen. "Thomas, Emily, tell me this isn't true." Emily burst into tears, real ones this time. "We didn't mean for it to go this far. It started with just a little money for emergencies, and then, I don't know what happened." The room descended into chaos. My mother crying, my father demanding explanations, Thomas blaming Emily, Emily blaming Thomas. I stood up calmly. "I'm giving you both 48 hours to transfer my share of the trust into my account. After that, my attorney will file a lawsuit and this becomes public record. Your choice." I walked out of the house with my head held high for the first time in my life, leaving the mess of decades of favoritism and lies behind me. If you've ever had to stand up for yourself against family members who've wronged you, you know how terrifying yet liberating that moment can be. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you'd handle a similar situation. Would you have confronted them differently? Let me know in the comments below. I naively believed that faced with irrefutable evidence, my siblings would make things right. I couldn't have been more wrong. The morning after the confrontation, my phone exploded with notifications. Text messages, voicemails, and social media alerts poured in from extended family members. "How could you make up such horrible lies about Thomas and Emily? Your grandparents would be ashamed of your greed. We always knew you were jealous, but this is a new low." Confused, I called my cousin Madison, the only family member who had shown me any support. "Jessica, Thomas, and Emily have been telling everyone that you forged documents to try to steal their inheritance," Madison explained. "They're saying you've always been jealous of their success and this is your way of extorting money from them. They've got the whole family believing it. But the documents are real. The emails are real." I protested. "They're claiming you hacked their emails and created fake documents. Thomas even said he's considering pressing charges against you for attempted fraud." The smear campaign was comprehensive. Thomas had created a family group chat specifically to discuss my mental health crisis and dangerous behavior. Emily had been calling family members individually, crying about how frightened she was of my unstable and threatening actions. Even worse, my parents had sided with them. Mom called that afternoon, her voice trembling with disappointment. "Jessica, we raised you better than this. Thomas showed us how those documents were clearly altered. The dates don't even match up with when your grandparents' real will was executed. Mom, Thomas is lying to you. I can prove these documents are authentic. Just meet me at the lawyer's office." Enough. You've always been jealous of your siblings, but this is beyond anything we could have imagined. Until you apologize and get help, I don't think we should speak. She hung up before I could respond. I felt completely isolated. Extended family members I'd been close to my entire life were now avoiding me. Aunts and uncles who had attended my college graduation and celebrated my career achievements now believed I was a mentally unstable fraudster trying to steal from my own siblings. Rachel called me with even more troubling news. "Jessica, we need to move quickly. I've been monitoring the trust account, and Thomas is attempting to transfer the remaining funds to an offshore account. We need to file for an emergency injunction today." While preparing the legal paperwork, Rachel discovered something else. Thomas had been embezzling from our parents' accounts as well. He had access as their financial power of attorney, something I hadn't even known they'd designated, and had been siphoning money from their retirement fund for years. This explains why their medical bills have been such a struggle, I realized. I've been contributing what I could from my salary, thinking they were on a fixed income, while Thomas has been draining their accounts. I hired a private investigator named Keith who specialized in financial crimes. Within days, he uncovered a pattern of financial misconduct extending far beyond the trust fund. Thomas had been using our parents' credit to secure loans for his real estate business. Emily had opened credit cards in our mother's name to fund her shopping habits. The stress began taking a toll on me. My coworkers noticed my distraction and the dark circles under my eyes. My boss, Allison, called me into her office after I made a rare error on a client's financial plan. "Jessica, is everything okay? This isn't like you." Something about her genuine concern broke my carefully maintained composure. I found myself telling her everything: the trust fund, the betrayal, the family turning against me. Instead of judgment, Allison offered support. "Take whatever time you need. Your clients can be temporarily reassigned. Focus on fighting for what's rightfully yours." Meanwhile, the personal attacks escalated. Emily showed up at my office unannounced, creating a scene in the lobby. "How dare you try to destroy our family?" she shouted as security escorted her out. "You've always been pathetic and jealous. No one will believe you." That evening, I received a threatening letter from Thomas's attorney, warning that if I proceeded with legal action, they would countersue for defamation, attempted fraud, and emotional distress. For a moment, I considered backing down. Was it worth losing my entire family over money? But this wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the years of lies, the callous betrayal, and the realization that my siblings had never truly valued me as part of the family. With Rachel's help, I filed the official lawsuit the next day. The court immediately froze the trust assets to prevent further withdrawals while the case was pending. That night, as I sat alone in my apartment reviewing legal documents, my doorbell rang. When I checked the peephole, I saw Madison standing there, clutching a large envelope. "I found something you need to see," she said breathlessly as I opened the door. "Thomas doesn't know I have these." Inside the envelope were original copies of bank statements showing multiple transfers from the trust to Thomas and Emily's personal accounts, along with handwritten notes from Thomas detailing their Jessica management strategy. "Where did you get these?" I asked, amazed. "I've been helping Thomas organize his home office for his tax preparation," Madison explained. "These were in a folder marked private. I know it was wrong to take them, but after what they did to you, it just isn't right." With this new evidence in hand, I felt a renewed determination. The final piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. Tomorrow would be our first court hearing, and I was finally ready. The courthouse was imposing as I walked up the steps with Rachel by my side. Inside, Thomas and Emily sat with their attorneys, looking confident. Thomas wore his most expensive suit, while Emily had dressed conservatively in a cream-colored outfit that made her look innocent and vulnerable. Their confidence visibly faltered when the judge announced that all trust assets would remain frozen during proceedings. Thomas's attorney immediately objected. "Your Honor, my clients have been responsibly managing these assets for years. This freeze causes undue hardship." "Responsibly managing?" Rachel countered. "Their idea of management was to systematically drain funds rightfully belonging to my client. We have evidence of multiple unauthorized withdrawals totaling over $1.4 million. Thomas's attorney attempted to paint me as a vindictive sister jealous of my siblings' success. Miss Parker has always envied her brother's business acumen and her sister's social standing. This lawsuit is nothing but a desperate attempt to extort money based on forged documents." Then came a surprise I hadn't anticipated. Harold Jenkins, the family's longtime accountant, had been subpoenaed and took the stand as a witness. Mr. Jenkins, did you have any knowledge of the trust established by Robert and Jean Parker for their grandchildren? Rachel asked. Harold adjusted his glasses nervously. Yes, I helped them set it up about 7 years before their passing. It was to be divided equally among the 3 grandchildren. And did you assist Mr. Thomas Parker with managing this trust after the grandparents' passing? Initially, yes. I advised on the proper procedures for distributions, including obtaining signatures from all 3 beneficiaries. However, Mr. Parker informed me that his sister had agreed to let him and Miss Emily Parker manage her portion indefinitely. When I suggested getting that in writing, he discontinued my services for the trust. Emily's husband, Brandon, sitting in the gallery, looked stunned. As Harold continued testifying about the trust's legitimate existence and value, Brandon's expression shifted from surprise to anger. He hadn't known about the deception either. I took the stand next, detailing my discovery of the trust documents and the subsequent confrontation with my siblings. My voice remained steady as I described a lifetime of subtle favoritism culminating in this ultimate betrayal. I never wanted this to become a legal battle, I concluded. I simply wanted what my grandparents intended me to have. The most damning testimony came from the forensic accountant hired by my attorney, who meticulously traced the movement of funds from the trust to Thomas's home purchase and Emily's extravagant lifestyle. Throughout the proceedings, I noticed an elderly woman I didn't immediately recognize sitting attentively in the back row. During a recess, she approached me. Jessica, you might not remember me. I'm Catherine, your grandfather's sister. My great-aunt Catherine. I hadn't seen her in years, not since a family rift had separated her from my grandfather. I came as soon as I heard about the case, she explained. Your grandfather and I reconciled shortly before his death. He told me all about the trust he'd established for you and your siblings. He was especially concerned that you receive your fair share, knowing how your parents favored Thomas and Emily. Catherine had brought with her handwritten letters from my grandfather discussing the trust and his wishes for all 3 grandchildren to benefit equally. These letters, written to Catherine in the months before his death, would prove crucial to our case. Thomas tried one last desperate move, filing a motion claiming I was mentally unstable and therefore incapable of managing a large sum of money. This backfired spectacularly when my boss Allison submitted a sworn statement about my exemplary work as a financial advisor, managing millions in client assets with impeccable judgment. As the evidence mounted against them, cracks appeared in my siblings' unified front. Emily began distancing herself from Thomas, suggesting she had been manipulated by her older brother. Thomas responded by attempting to shift more blame onto Emily, claiming she had pressured him to withhold information about the trust. The discovery phase revealed even more financial misconduct than we'd initially uncovered. Thomas had used trust money not just for his house, but also to cover gambling debts. Emily had funded not only vacations but also a secret apartment in the city she kept, without her husband's knowledge. When these details emerged, Emily's husband Brandon approached me outside the courthouse. Jessica, I had no idea about any of this, he said, looking genuinely distraught. I thought our lifestyle came from my income and family money. Emily told me you declined your portion of a small inheritance years ago because you didn't need it. I'm so sorry. I nodded, unsure what to say. Brandon looked devastated, and I could only imagine the conversations happening in their household. Meanwhile, Thomas was hemorrhaging business contacts. Several clients dropped him as their real estate agent as news of the lawsuit spread through our community. His wife was reportedly staying with her parents, taking their children with her. After several grueling weeks of court proceedings, the judge ordered mediation before making a final ruling. In the mediator's office, Thomas and Emily finally seemed to grasp the severity of their situation. Their attorneys advised them that given the evidence, they were unlikely to win at trial and could potentially face criminal charges for fraud. Still, they refused to offer a fair settlement. Thomas insisted he could only return $300,000, less than a third of what I was owed. Emily claimed all her money was spent and she had nothing to contribute. That's not acceptable, Rachel stated firmly. We're prepared to proceed to trial and pursue full damages plus punitive penalties. The mediation failed, sending us back to court for the judge's ruling. The night before the final hearing, I received a call from an unexpected source. My parents. Jessica, my father's voice sounded tired and old. We've been looking at the bank statements. There are withdrawals we never authorized. Thomas has been. He's been taking our money. I know, Dad, I said gently. The forensic accountant found those transactions. We were wrong, my mother admitted, her voice breaking. We should have listened to you. Can we meet before court tomorrow? The next morning, I arrived at the courthouse early to find my parents waiting. My mother embraced me with tears in her eyes. We've been such fools, she whispered. Letting Thomas handle everything because he's good with money. Believing him over you because he's always been so convincing. My father looked diminished somehow, his usual confident posture replaced with the slump of a man who realized he'd failed his child. We're testifying today, he said resolutely. The court needs to know the truth. When court convened, there was an audible gasp as my parents were called to the stand. Thomas and Emily looked betrayed as our father detailed how he'd recently discovered unauthorized withdrawals from his accounts. Our mother tearfully admitted the favoritism that had enabled Thomas and Emily's behavior throughout their lives. The judge's preliminary ruling came swiftly and decisively in my favor. Thomas and Emily would be required to repay my full inheritance plus interest and legal fees. Moreover, Thomas would be removed as trustee and executor of any family financial matters. As a final blow, the judge referred the case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal investigation into fraud and elder financial abuse regarding my parents' accounts. Thomas attempted one last desperate move, transferring his remaining liquid assets to a friend's account to hide them from the judgment. The court immediately froze all of Thomas's and Emily's accounts, including joint accounts with their spouses. Walking out of the courthouse that day, I felt no triumph, only a profound sadness for what our family had become, mixed with relief that justice was finally being served. The final court ruling came 3 months after the initial hearing. I was awarded my full third of the trust fund, plus accumulated interest, totaling just over $950,000. Additionally, Thomas and Emily were ordered to pay my legal fees and a penalty for their willful and malicious misappropriation of funds. Thomas faced the most severe consequences. Beyond the financial penalties, the district attorney filed charges of financial elder abuse for his mishandling of our parents' accounts. His real estate license was suspended pending an ethics investigation, effectively ending his career. Emily's comfortable life imploded as well. Brandon filed for divorce after discovering the extent of her deception, not just about the trust, but about their entire financial situation. She was forced to sell her designer handbags, jewelry, and even her luxury car to cover her portion of what she owed me. Standing on the courthouse steps after the final ruling, my parents publicly apologized to me. "We failed you," my father said, his voice carrying to the small crowd of family members and reporters who had gathered. "We favored your siblings and turned a blind eye when they wronged you. We hope someday you can forgive us." The apology was meaningful, but it couldn't instantly heal decades of hurt. Still, it marked the beginning of a new chapter in our relationship. The extended family's treatment of me transformed almost overnight. Aunts, uncles, and cousins who had believed Thomas and Emily's lies now called and texted with apologies and invitations. Some were genuinely remorseful. Others seemed primarily interested in aligning themselves with the family member who now had financial resources. I kept most at a polite distance, still processing the pain of their quick judgment. As I began rebuilding my life with my inheritance, I received an unexpected letter from Catherine, my great-aunt. She had been impressed by my integrity throughout the ordeal and wanted me to know she had amended her own will to leave her modest estate to me. "You remind me of your grandfather," she wrote. "He would be proud of how you stood up for yourself while maintaining your dignity." Catherine's words meant more than her bequest. In honor of my grandparents, I established a scholarship fund in their names for students studying financial literacy, a small way to create something positive from the painful experience. Meanwhile, Thomas's life continued to unravel. His wife filed for separation, concerned about the impact of his legal troubles on their children. He was forced to sell the mansion purchased with my stolen inheritance to pay his debts and legal fees. The irony wasn't lost on me that he now lived in an apartment smaller than mine. One rainy night, about 6 months after the court ruling, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Thomas, looking nothing like the confident, polished brother I'd known. His clothes were rumpled, his face unshaven. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice hoarse. I hesitated but ultimately let him in. For 2 hours, we had the most honest conversation of our lives. Thomas broke down, admitting the jealousy he'd felt toward me, the younger sister, who'd achieved success through hard work while he'd always relied on favoritism and shortcuts. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said as he was leaving. "I don't deserve it. But I want you to know I'm getting help and trying to become someone my children can eventually respect." I set clear boundaries with Thomas, making it clear that trust, if ever rebuilt, would take years of consistent actions, not words. Still, it was the beginning of a different kind of relationship, one based on reality rather than manipulation. Emily's path was more complicated. Initially, she blamed everyone but herself, Thomas for influencing her, Brandon for pressuring her to maintain a certain lifestyle, even our parents for setting up the family dynamic. She took a job as a retail associate, her first real job at age 36, and moved into a small apartment after the divorce. Our parents, now in their 70s, faced their own reckoning. They sold their house to repay the money Thomas had taken from them and moved into a retirement community. Our relationship slowly improved as they made genuine efforts to treat me with the respect they'd always given my siblings. The family dynamic had fundamentally shifted. At a small gathering for my father's birthday, I noticed how everyone deferred to me on financial decisions, a stark contrast to being excluded from such conversations in the past. Thomas's teenage daughter Lily reached out to me independently, asking if I would help her understand college financial aid options. Our weekly coffee meetings to discuss her education gradually evolved into a true mentoring relationship. I saw in Lily a chance to break the cycle of family dysfunction, to show her a different way of relating to others with honesty and respect. 3 years after the court case, I used part of my inheritance to launch my own financial advisory firm, specializing in helping clients navigate family financial dynamics. My personal experience had given me unique insight into how money issues can reveal and magnify family dysfunction. My philosophy became trust, but verify, a balance of giving family members the benefit of the doubt while maintaining healthy boundaries. This approach guided me both professionally and in my gradually healing family relationships. 3 years have passed since that fateful BBQ where my siblings joked about my death while hiding my inheritance. Looking back from my corner office in the financial advisory firm I now own, it's remarkable how completely our family dynamic has transformed. My business is thriving. I've built a niche practice helping clients navigate complex family financial situations, drawing from my own experience to spot red flags others might miss. My tagline, "Preventing Family Financial Betrayal," resonates with clients who have their own stories of trust broken and relationships strained over money. Thomas has changed in ways I never expected. After hitting rock bottom, losing his license, his marriage, and his reputation, he enrolled in a financial ethics course and began the long process of rebuilding his life. He now works for a construction company, making honest money for the first time in his adult life. Our relationship isn't close, but it's built on something real rather than manipulation and jealousy. At our most recent conversation, he said something that stayed with me. "I spent my whole life being the favorite son and feeling entitled to everything. Losing it all was the wake-up call I needed." Emily's journey has been more challenging. After her divorce, she struggled with depression and resentment. However, necessity forced her to develop independence and work ethic she'd never had before. She started as a retail sales associate, then moved into event planning, discovering she had a genuine talent for organization when she actually applied herself. Last Christmas, she gave me a handmade scrapbook filled with childhood photos of the 3 of us. Inside was a letter expressing genuine remorse, not just for the trust fund betrayal, but for years of subtle put-downs and exclusion. "I was always jealous of how capable you were," she wrote. "It was easier to push you away than admit you had qualities I lacked. Our parents have made the most heartfelt amends. Dad apologized for the favoritism that created the toxic family dynamic in the first place. Mom acknowledged how she enabled Thomas and Emily's worst behaviors while taking my loyalty for granted. We set this all in motion decades ago. Dad admitted during a family therapy session we started attending monthly. By treating you three so differently, we created this competition and resentment that nearly destroyed our family. These days, our parents consult me on all financial decisions, a complete reversal from the days when Thomas controlled everything. The irony isn't lost on any of us that the child they thought least capable of financial success now owns a thriving financial advisory business. Holiday gatherings have a different energy now. The power dynamics have fundamentally shifted. Where once Thomas and Emily dominated conversations while I sat quietly on the periphery, now family members actively seek my input and perspective. It's not about revenge or gloating, it's about a long overdue rebalancing of respect. Thomas's daughter Lily, now in her first year of college, has become like a niece to me. I helped her secure scholarships and create a financial plan for her education. Our weekly check-in calls have become a highlight for both of us. Through Lily, I see the possibility of breaking generational patterns of favoritism and dishonesty. Last month, Thomas asked if I would consider helping him rebuild his credit and create a financial plan for his future. Emily requested advice on retirement planning now that she's supporting herself. These requests symbolize a new phase in our relationship, one where my expertise is valued and their humility is genuine. I've met someone too, Daniel, a client who came to me after experiencing his own family financial betrayal. Our shared experiences gave us an immediate understanding of each other's boundaries and values. He proposed last month, and we're planning a small, meaningful wedding focused on authentic relationships rather than appearances. As I reflect on everything that's happened, I realize that while money was the catalyst for our family's implosion, the real issues ran much deeper. The trust fund betrayal was merely a symptom of long-standing patterns of favoritism, entitlement, and dysfunction. The inheritance my grandparents left wasn't just financial, it was the opportunity to finally bring these patterns to light and break them once and for all. In that sense, it was the most valuable gift they could have given all of us. Family relationships are complex, and healing isn't linear. There are still awkward moments and old patterns that occasionally resurface. But we're all committed to something better, something healthier, and more honest than what we had before. If my story resonates with you, I hope it gives you courage to stand up for yourself while leaving room for genuine change in others. Have you ever had to confront family betrayal or favoritism? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear more stories about overcoming family challenges, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself doesn't mean giving up on family, it means creating the possibility for something better. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the most painful betrayals can lead to the most meaningful growth.